You are now part of a social experiment.
See now where my limit is. Only got no.
I remember in a previous interview you mentioned that you study Frantz Fanon, and he talks about a theory called schizoid play. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So what Fanon basically broke down was that there's two kinds of play, and he said that when our Black children do not get to see themselves as the hero, as in characters that look like them as heroes, they have what's called restricted play, which is they never become the hero. So their play never involves them being that heroic figure. And then he said, or what you get is when they see the white superhero, when they're running around, and I remember this so vividly in my mind as a child. I used to put the towel down the back of my t-shirt and I used to run around as Superman, I'm flying. And what Fanon says is that in that moment, the Black child is actually identifying as that white superhero. He's identifying as that European. And what was really interesting about that was he used the example of Asterix the Gaul. Now, I don't know if you remember those comic books, but there was this group of comic books called Asterix, and it was about this guy who used to take magic potion. It made him super strong. And there's another character called Obelix. And in those books, the depiction of Black people were always slaves, big lips, bone going through the nose, leopard skin boxer shorts, and they were always carrying white people around on shields. And I mean, overly big lips, big and red, comically. And I remember being a child reading those books and laughing at those characters, not realizing I was laughing at myself because I was identifying as Asterix, the Gaul. I was identifying as this little European.
Right.
And so looking at the Black guys and, oh, look at him, look at his lips, and not realizing I was actually laughing at myself. And so that's what he calls schizoid play, when you're not even realizing that you're laughing at yourself. You're not even you're identifying as the European. And so what happens is that you as a Black individual never get to have those virtues of heroism, because you always see them as other, because they are always packaged in something that's completely different from you.
Yeah, while you're getting that together too, man, it kind of reminded me too of my own play, man, with action figures and superheroes and this and that and the third. And when I was playing, I didn't realize this until like you mentioned schizoid play. When I was playing, like the ultimate thing for me was like figuring out a storyline in my head in which, I'd be the white hero, of course, and then like I'd be sacrificing myself for the world of the universe. Like that was the ultimate story, like every time I played. And now looking back, I can see where all that came from, where the idea of the ultimate thing for me was to sacrifice myself. Like that's really interesting, man. But along with Frantz Fanon, I know Amos Wilson talks about Black children and their play a lot too, in regards to what we play with, how we play, and what we see. So
can you see that?
Yes, sir. So
right.
what you're talking about is a Black boy who's standing in front of the mirror with his cape on, and the reflection is a white Christopher Reeves Superman. So that is it.
And that is it. And so this is where we are now.
Yes. So Black boy, reflection is Black Panther. All right. And I think that is a much more important, I think, self-representation. Even though I have a few issues with Black Panther within itself, but
yes.
We can't get it all, right, Jason?
But exactly that. Let's. And I always say, let's not make the good an enemy of the great.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are with it. But that is that picture. I had to save that on the phone because that for me perfectly depicts what Fanon was talking about with schizoid play, where that young Black boy is there looking up at Christopher Reeves as this great thing, and he is visualizing himself as that. And that's a massive, massive problem in the community.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And not only that, but when we're getting, like you just mentioned, when we're getting the Black people, they are the slaves, they are the smaller roles. And I kind of wanted to get into that too, because sometimes we think that this stuff is just from a historical standpoint, but it's from a historical standpoint into today. So even some of our favorite comic books, you have Superman. There was an issue in which Lois Lane wanted to cover the plight of black folks, so she decided to use Superman's machine to turn herself black, and because no black people would talk to her in the black part of Metropolis. So she does that, and you know,
they even did an issue of Superman where Superman went to Harlem, and but the black people didn't want him there. You know, they even did an issue. I remember it. They did an issue, and it's funny because I've got a title coming out called Heru's Sixth Century, and I cover some issue 1 of that is gonna be interesting, man. Because
can't wait, man. Can't wait.
Issue 1 of that, I cover some ish in that, man. I cover some stuff in that which I just feel like, it was. I suppose it was my attack on the establishment, that some of the issues that they decided not to cover in their books, you know, things like the Klan, things like exactly that, Superman, you know, that whole going to Harlem, and you know, just these guys always being heroes, but heroes to white folk. You know, what about the black folk? And so Heru holds them to account. Let's put it that way.
Man, I cannot wait for that one. Can't wait. But I also wanted to tackle just a few more. So that was the Superman piece. There's this older comic. I think that I can't remember the name of it, man, but it's an older comic, and the side character, I think it's from Captain Marvel, you know, has something to do with Captain Marvel, but the side character is like this blackface character with big lips. And just like you mentioned, like we see a lot of that in the older comic book, you know, world. You know, just all the way through, man. And then I know a lot of people like to, you know, say Stan Lee, man, he really brought, you know, the black experience to the world of comics and this and that. But he created, like, you know, X-Men, and X-Men is supposed to be Malcolm X ideology. You got with Professor Xavier versus Magneto. Magneto's the Malcolm X ideology, and then Professor Xavier is the Martin Luther King ideology. So we're talking about like civil rights and the mutants, but they're all white. So how that's number one. And then number two, just the way that, you know, the mutants are being represented, and the whole ideology that, you know, Professor Xavier wants to kind of like make peace with these people that are trying to kill, you know, everybody. And then, you know, Magneto is the other way around. Let's just kill them all and have a, you know, like, so I thought it was like very like a simplistic viewpoint on the civil rights era that Stan Lee tried to do. And then you're trying to make something representative of, you know, black people in the civil rights, and all the characters are still white, you know, so it's like, what are we doing?
Exactly. And I think that's why I always say is that one of the things that irritates me about black people is what we want to pass off the responsibility to someone else to tell our stories. It's not their responsibility. You know, it's not Stan's responsibility to tell our story. What our responsibility is to vote with our feet, vote with our dollars, vote with our pounds. You know, don't support that stuff. Support what we're doing over here, telling our story. You know, and that's what's important. And what I call audience responsibility. I just feel like there's such a cop out. You know, let's take rap music, for example. You'll get people say, you know, gangster rap is bad, it's this, it's that, it's misogynist, it's anti-black because, you know, it's nigger this, nigger that, and blah, 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 blah. But yet still will buy it, yet still will play it, yet still, but want to point the finger at the rappers. And my thing is, no, point the finger at yourself.
Indeed.
We need to have audience responsibility. And if there's something you don't want to see, then do not support it. It's just that simple. And if there's something you want to see when it's being done the right way, support that. That's the long and short of it. And so we have got the ability, especially Black America, but I personally don't like to separate Black people. I think that we're a global people, we're a global family. And in very much the same way, we have our own internal things. That's always going to be the way, same as white people. Yep. White people are on one page, especially when it comes to us. yeah, and we need
yeah,
they're all singing from the same song sheet when it comes
it's like
to
they call it the Voltron effect, man. They'll come together, man, if it means
facts.
like subjugating some
Facts.
black folk. Like, let's do it.
Trust me, let's do it, man. Like we'll discuss the problems we've got later, but right here, right now, let's do this. And we need to be on that same kind of page. And I think that what we need to do is, audience responsibility is for me a massive part in Black economics, Black power, Black politics. We have to get to the point where we're not sitting here waiting for someone else. It winds me up when I see Black people moaning about what Marvel didn't do for Black people, or what Disney didn't do for Black people, or what Warner Brothers didn't do for Black people. Why they do Cyborg like that? Why they do this?
Man, I was just gonna get into Cyborg, man. Oh, you reading my mind right now.
Forget all that, though. You understand? My thing is, listen, man, if they do it and they do a good job, thumbs up. But we should be focusing on what we're doing out here, man.
Absolutely.
Real talk. Because collectively, we've got more than enough money, man. Black America alone spends more than the whole of New Zealand and Australia's GDP. Just Black America. Come on, man. We've got the money.
Well said. Well said. And the thing, too, I think about exposing some of the Black characters, sometimes we get excited about, that there is just this Black character, and maybe they're taking on a whole movie by themselves, or they're taking on a whole comic book series by themselves. But do we really examine the character and see, who they are and what the representation of them are? And a lot of times we don't. So you look at somebody like Cyborg, who, star athlete, all the Black stereotypes, has a problem with his anger and aggressive male. And he has this accident, and, he's part man, part machine, with no genitals. And his best friend is a white boy who turns into a white man, Shazam. Like it's just playing into like all the stuff that the stereotypes and the racism behind Black men within his character. And then the same thing, this will be the last one, Luke Cage is the same thing, man. Like even from the comic book into the series, man, like from him being a hero for hire, like who's a hero for hire?
Who? And I think that's the again, what I talk about is and I always say, when we let someone else tell our story, it's like me, if I was to write, about Asians, you guys say Asians. When we say Asian over here, we generally mean Indians or Pakistanis or Bengalis. I know you guys, you mean what we would call Oriental, I suppose, Chinese, Japanese, so on. But if I was to write about Asians, for a fact I'm going to put some chopstick in there. For a fact I'm going to put some kung fu in there. Which are just stereotypes, but that's my idea of what they are like.
Exactly.
And so when you allow someone else to tell your story, they're just going to hype on the stereotypes. So Luke Cage, here we've got this guy with a big afro and a tiara, and these like these wristlets that are reminiscent of slavery, and he's walking around a bright yellow shirt, skin tight jeans on, which are basically leggings, high heeled boots, walking around Harlem, punching people in the face and saying "Sweet Christmas." And that's not a blaxploitation idea of a superhero. And like you said, hero for hire, and that was always the big headline for him, Luke Cage, hero for hire. So all the rest of the heroes are doing it out of benevolence, out of it's the right thing to do. But the Black guy, he needs to be paid for this,
Exactly.
I'm out here doing. And so all of those underlying things, that was someone's vision of Black people. Someone sees people as eccentric and greedy. And so they work that into their superhero narrative of us.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important for us to control our narratives, or you're always going to get those terrible stereotypes. And if you look at War Machine, if you look at Falcon, these guys are little more than butlers, to be honest. like War Machine's like Tony Stark's butler. Falcon's Captain America's butler, he's sidekick. So there's always this kind of
thank you for the suit. Like, like you didn't even like I think Falcon too has a history, like he's like a pimp or whatever, and he changes, whatever, but that's his like, come on, man. Come on.
Always, there's always.
And even those characters too, like you mentioned, they don't have any superpowers. Like Tony Stark is like, his superpower is being a genius. So I think like we were talking about with the psychology, it hits the white boy that's reading it, that I don't even need any superpowers. Like just me being white and smart is enough. Like,
Batman.
Characters, Batman, exactly. No superpowers, but he's taking on Superman.
Exactly.
And winning
just with prep work. Yeah.
Crazy,
just
man.
prep work, and he can do all of that. And you're absolutely right, and that's always been my biggest peeve with the black superheroes, is they always had rubbish powers. Always.
Indeed, man. And that leads to like just the importance of the work that you are doing, man, changing the narrative and changing the script.
So every day I'm going hard. I'm talking business, bank accounts, and credit cards. And somehow we defeat the odds and making sure that no one's starved illegal or you had a job.
JBEON Comics presents Heru. When an asteroid falls from outer space to Earth, a runaway slave finds the asteroid and is endowed with superhuman powers. He sets about on a mission to free his people and change the world. Unknown to him, the very asteroid that gave him his powers carries a dark secret that could destroy the world. Heru, the first hero.